Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for joining me in the live stream. First song request right off the bat. Cool. My Foolish Heart. I'm going to actually get my real book and read that one. I have not done that one in a while. I don't. Okay, I don't have my real book, but I'm just going to get. I'll just get the chords up. I think I remember the melody. Let me see. How are you guys doing this evening? If it's evening where you guys are. Alright, let me see if I can get through this. I have not played this song in forever, but I will do my best. Thanks for the request. I haven't played that song in forever, as you can tell. I definitely do not remember the melody exact, but I will have to brush up on that one. Good request. Hey guys, how's it going? For everyone in the chat, thanks for joining us. Hey Jacob, what improvisation technique would you say most makes a solo sound like jazz? That's a really good question. Let me think. Probably the use of chromaticism. I think, if you're listening to somebody that's doing like rock soloing or something that's, a little bit outside of the jazz tradition, as soon as you start incorporating some chromaticism in it, I think it instantly kind of jazzes it up a bit. So maybe, for example, let's say I was just playing over like a G minor and I'm doing like, my regular minor pentatonic. Right, very rock sounding, even if I do some of the modes. So it gets a little jazzier when you start throwing in stuff beyond the pentatonics, but I think beyond that, as soon as I start doing some chromaticism, so for instance, like if as soon as like I just do my pentatonic stuff, and once I start mixing in some chromatics, it instantly gets more of that jazz sound. So maybe just as like a little brief answer to that question, I would say to sound the most jazz in the easiest way possible, try to work on some chromatic stuff. And there are a lot of different ways to work on that. I think one of the easiest ways is to just take the notes of the arpeggio. So we were just in G minor, right? So I'll take G, B flat, and D. And the easiest way to think of chromatics is the arpeggio notes are always going to be really strong notes to land on. So you can think of it as long as you're landing on one of the notes of the arpeggio, you can approach them in many different ways from chromatics. So the way I think of chromatics is like, for example, one below, which just means one below every note of the arpeggio. Right, that's one of the more cliche ones. One above, which is a little different. That one doesn't necessarily always work as well because the note you're starting on is a little bit more dissonant. But then once you start expanding on that, two below. Two, I think I might have just said two below. It's two above, but two below. So those are some of the easier ones where you're just going in one direction, but then when you start combining them, so like one below, one above, that's when you hear I'll vamp a G minor chord. So like little ideas like that, where I'm just pretty much doing one note below the chord tone and one note above, right? Then if I want to expand on it even more and make it a little bit longer, I can do one below and two above, which sounds really cool. Right, so I'm like very deliberately trying to use it, but I would just use those little bits and pieces to kind of weave in and out of some different ideas when you're improvising. So that was one below and two above. Now we do two below, two below and two above, that is. And a lot of times when I'm trying to get ideas like this going, I'll just write out some lines that go right over it. So I'll just come up with like so. Something like that. And just get an idea where I get it under my fingers and I can play it in a couple different positions. Brazilian sounding? Yeah, I could definitely get some of that Brazil. Yeah, it works nice over the bossa note. So I would say, to answer your question, a lot of that, totally, that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to use more enclosures, and my fingers are not used to it all. Greetings from Oberlin Conservatory. Oh, cool, nice. Back to school, right? It's that time of year. Yeah, the chromaticism really makes a big difference. When I started exploring more of that, kind of exploring a lot of the Pat Martino. So all that kind of stuff, kind of exploring that and seeing how he's utilizing a lot of that chromatic kind of sound within the Dorian scale and stuff like that, and then and then not transposing, transferring the Dorian over to like different chord qualities and stuff like that. I would say, to answer your question, that's probably one of the easier ways to get some of that jazz sound going, and that's a huge part of bebop. Like if you're learning Charlie Parker solos and stuff like that, and you just isolate some lines, just analyze what's going on. There's so much chromatic stuff, stuff like that. Yeah, great question. Anybody in the chat have any questions or any song requests or anything? Shoot them over. I will do the best that I can. Right now, we're just kind of talking about chromatic playing. If anybody has any other questions pertaining to the chromaticism or like different types of chords to play it over, whatever you got, shoot it over. I'm all ears. What, the Allan Holdsworth tune? I haven't played that in so long. I think it's that. Start. Attempt to do an Allan Holdsworth impression and embarrass myself. I'm pretty sure that's the. I've only played that song once on a gig. That's a really weird song, actually. The time that I had a really hard time feeling the timing in that song. Like I remember, because it doesn't. It sounds like it comes in the end of one. It's like one. I always thought it was like the beat, like the end of 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, the end of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's actually not the end of 4. I forget exactly what the rhythm was, but I remember when I looked at it written out on paper, it was completely different from what I had thought it was. It's interesting when, I don't know if stuff like that has ever happened to you guys, but like when you internalize something a certain way and then you see it written on paper and rhythmically it's completely different than what you had expected. But honestly, anything pertaining to Allan Holdsworth, I'm not. I wish I was qualified to do a good impersonation, but Allan Holdsworth is on a completely different level. I have a couple licks I've learned here and there, but even when I'm learning his licks, I have no idea if I'm even doing the correct fingerings or doing the right articulations with my right hand. Allan Holdsworth is I think Allan Holdsworth is hands down one of the scariest guitar players of all time. There's very few guitar players I've ever heard that can achieve a lot of the types of sounds that he does. Sean Lane, I would say, is another one that's up there. A lot of those fusion guys, just some of the stuff they play is just terrifying, especially Holdsworth, because the stretches he's able to achieve, particularly if you look at the stretch he can achieve between his middle finger and his ring finger. Because if you notice, when you look at the hand, right, it's always easier to stretch between the pointer finger and the middle finger and then the ring finger and the pinky, but there's the webbing between your middle finger and your ring finger. So a lot of times, like when you're playing, it's always easier if you have like a big stretch, you can get like a decent stretch between this finger and even maybe between this finger. But then when you're trying to stretch the middle finger and the ring finger, it's way more complicated because of that webbing. And one thing that I did for a while to kind of practice that was I would try to just solo, not using my pointer finger at all. So literally just leave my pointer finger out, and I'll probably butcher this right now, but I'll try it. But for example. Or just practice your scales, the 3 fingers. Right, and that's really obviously incredibly awkward, but it's a good exercise if you're trying to get more of a little bit of a stretch between these three fingers. And also, while you're at it, it's a great exercise for getting the pinky working more. If you have a hard time using the pinky as much as you like, it's great for just kind of singling out the pinky. Pretty much my whole philosophy with anything on guitar is anytime something is hard, the best thing you can do is just take that one specific thing and just isolate it and just do that for a really long extended period of time. Because if it's complicated, and you just do that, it's going to make it much better just from the repetition. Um, nice exercise. Yeah, he definitely, some of that crazy like Coltrane sheet of sound stuff, achieving it on the guitar. Yeah, one of my biggest regrets is that I never got to see Allan Holdsworth live before he passed away, and he's always been one of my favorite guitar players. It just never really occurred to me, because I would never hear, very often about him touring and stuff like that. And I don't even think he was that old when he died. I think he was in his early 60s, maybe mid 60s. But I mean, I saw a video of him playing right before he died. It was his last performance, and he was still playing his ass off. He was still just as scary as he's always been. So that was, very nice to see. His age did not affect his guitar playing at all. And it's funny because when you watch interviews of him, he didn't even think he was good. He always says that he wanted to play saxophone, and he just had to settle for guitar. So basically, like, he tried to just achieve like a saxophone-like sound on the guitar, which is funny. It's funny just seeing how modest he was. So it just goes to show you with certain people, like when you're practicing a lot and you're trying to get better and you're getting frustrated and you're not happy with where you're at. I think a lot of times we have this false idea in our head that once we reach a certain level, everything's kind of just going to, gel, and we're just going to be really happy, and we're not going to really worry so much about our progress anymore. But I mean, if you're at the level that Allan Holdsworth is at and you're still not happy with your playing, I think that's pretty much a sign that it's always an ongoing process. And I think that's part of just being a good musician and just being a person who's driven and always wants to improve. Because if you ever got to a point where you were completely happy with your playing and you never wanted to improve, or you never felt like you had anything to learn, then I don't know. I don't think you'd be in it for the right reasons, right? Because if you're in it for the right reasons, you're not doing it because you're trying to arrive at a destination. You're doing it because you like the process. You have a drive for knowledge. You have a curiosity about the instrument. You want to keep exploring and learning stuff. And that's what's so great about music, because you have a lifetime of that. It's very hard to say that you're bored ever when you're a musician, because just the amount of stuff that can be learned at all times is just, never ending. And that's why I started getting into a lot of those classical guitar things, because that was an area that I hadn't really explored, and I was getting really into a lot of those composers like Ravel and Scriabin and Prokofiev. And, just going into that alone, it's so different from jazz, and it's such a different kind of avenue. And I feel like I'm just scratching the surface with that. So it's just like there's so many different avenues you can go down pertaining to music and guitar. And, just to always be mindful of that and try to just enjoy the journey rather than being fixated on arriving at this destination. And I think the majority of people get caught in that. I certainly do. I remember when I was younger and I used to be really into shredding. This was like before I got into jazz. I remember I used to think to myself, like, if I could just play like Yngwie Malmsteen one day, then everything will be fine. I'll never have to worry about practicing. I won't worry about improving. Everything will be great. And, at this point in my life, that's so far from where my playing has ended up. So it's just, I think we can set false expectations in our head. And I think that just kind of gets in the way of things a lot. So, anybody joining us or anybody in the chat, any questions or song requests, anything I could try to play, just shoot it out. I'll try it. I've been playing since I was in 5th grade, so I'm 28 now, so that means I started when I was 10. So I've been playing for 18 years. I didn't really like it at first, believe it or not. When I first started in 5th grade, I just wasn't really into it, and I couldn't, get myself to practice, and my parents would always try to get me to practice, and I couldn't. And then I wanted to stop at one point, and my parents kind of just forced me through it, which I'm extremely grateful for. I owe a lot to them because of that. And at a certain point in 8th grade, something just kind of clicked. I think it's when I started to learn how to read tabs, and I realized that I could actually play a lot of the stuff that I liked on the guitar. Like, back then I was into like AC/DC and a lot of that kind of generic stuff that you're into when you're younger and you're playing rock guitar and stuff like that. And I remember at one time I figured out how to play Back in Black, and that was like a revelation. I was like, wait a minute, I can actually do this stuff, because my early teacher, we were just like reading out of like a method book, like, and that's fine. That's great to know. But a lot of times, if you're unaware of like the possibilities that you can actually achieve on the guitar, it can kind of lose your interest pretty early on. So that's why when I'm teaching and stuff like that with my lessons and my students and stuff like that, I always try to make it as enjoyable as possible for them, and try to get a nice balance of learning theory and stuff like that, but also learning stuff that's going to make them enjoy the instrument and realize that they actually can do stuff that they listen to, because at the end of the day, like, we listen to music, we want to replicate to some extent what we're listening to if we're learning an instrument, right? So being able to demonstrate that to people that are, kids or anybody that's learning, I think is a really important thing. So yeah, it's been 18 years, I guess, is how long I've been playing. But not really serious. So really serious for maybe, I got really hardcore into it when I was like a freshman in high school, so 15, so maybe like really hardcore into it for like 13 years. Yeah, I think with guitar, I mean, it really all comes down to what you're looking to get out of it. If it's just something that you like to do as a hobby, and it's something that you use as a kind of like a therapeutic thing, something you can always go to whenever you want, then it's fine. Do it whenever you want. But if you find yourself taking breaks, and if you like you said, if it feels better when you come back to it, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that if it works for you. I've tried to take little breaks here and there. Like, I'll be like, all right, I've been going pretty hard lately. Maybe I should take a break today. But it's much easier said than done for me. I don't know. I always feel like I can, and then when I try to do it, I kind of don't know what to do with myself. So maybe I should be a little bit better about that and not be going so hard all the time. But I just think maintaining some sort of practice, even if you're doing it a little bit every day, just having something that you're always consistently doing, that you're striving towards, is the best thing. And we're all different. We all have different ways of learning and practicing, and our attention spans are different in certain things. Some people can really hyper focus on a specific thing. That's kind of how my mind tends to work. I'm very good at hyper focusing on things. Like, I know other people aren't always the same, and that's not necessarily the best way to learn either. I mean, everybody has different ways of learning. Some people learn the best just kind of like very much on the spot, in the moment, just how they feel at that time. But I think just maintaining some sort of practice, some sort of thing that you can always constantly go back to, that you're maintaining and keeping consistently through your day to day, is just the best thing. And even that, like, if you feel like you want to develop speed and stuff like that, practicing with a metronome is immensely helpful with stuff like that. Like, I'll give you an example of like something I would do. I'll just take an exercise. Maybe I'll do like the same exercise I did last week, some of those scales. So I'll put the metronome on. And you could treat this just like you. I'll explain in a sec. So, like, I'll put the metronome on 100. So obviously we all know that scale in thirds. So I just did eighth notes. Then I'll do eighth note triplets. Then 16th notes. And then maybe 16th note triplets. No, that's actually a little too fast. So then that's a good example. So I just figured out I can go up to 16th notes at that speed. So then that was 100 BPM. Then maybe I'll go to like 110, do the same thing. Triplets. 16th notes. Okay, and from there, I would would just keep going until I found a speed where it was kind of like my breaking point. And then so when I say maintaining like a steady practice every day of something you can go back to, you can have something as simple as that. Be like, okay, I got it to 150 today. I'm going to mark that down. Tomorrow, I'll see if I can get it to 152, 153. It doesn't have to be anything drastic, but if you can make these little incremental changes that you can go back and do every day, that can really go a long way. And I use the analogy a lot of times of like people that go to the gym, like people that like will lift weights and stuff like that, right? You're lifting to a certain point, and then maybe see if you can do a little bit more. I don't do stuff like that, so I don't know exactly how the process is with that, but it's a similar type of thing where you get to a certain point, and then the eventual goal is to keep building on that and keep adding more and more till you get to this desired goal, whatever that goal may be. And I think another thing when we're talking about playing fast and stuff like that is, I don't even think that with the speed stuff, I don't even think it really gets to a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm happy with this, like where I've gotten. Like, it's just, I've never like said, all right, once I get to 200, I'm going to be happy. It's just, you get to wherever you get and you just kind of get a feel for like what you're able to do and what is within your range of technique and stuff like that. So I would definitely recommend something like that, and you can do that with things beyond thirds. I'll do a major scale in fourths. Those are a little bit trickier too, and they're a little bit better on the left hand because the fingerings are a little bit more awkward, so you're getting a little bit more of a workout in your left hand. Fifths. Sixths. Sevenths. Okay, and then beyond that, there's all different kinds of things you can do. If you're not really into jazz and you're more into the shredding stuff, being able to do all your scales 3 notes per strings is great. Because a lot of those shred guys, when they're doing a lot of that fast alternate picking stuff, it's like when you hear like Paul Gilbert do a lot of that stuff, right? Going up. So that's very shred friendly if that's what you're into. Do I have an SG? Yeah, I actually do have an SG. It's not here. It's actually at my parents' house. But that was one of my first guitars when I started getting more serious. My dad bought me a Gibson SG. And I haven't played it in a long time. It's kind of old now. And I actually had a very traumatic experience with it where I was standing up one time and I was like this. I didn't have my arms on the guitar and I didn't have strap locks on. And it actually fell and the neck cracked and it was hanging off of the guitar. But it didn't completely come off. But I was like freaking out. I was young. I was like in high school or something. And then my dad actually took it and he like wood glued it and he clamped it overnight. And then you didn't even notice the difference. You see the little marks where the crack was, but it played. Actually, the funny thing is it actually played better afterwards. But maybe one of these streams, if I can remember, I'll just bring it and I'll just show you what it looks like because it was kind of a crazy thing that happened. So yeah, to answer your question, I do have an SG. And I have a Telecaster over there, as you can see. I'm typically more of a Gibson guy than a Fender guy. I've never really owned a Strat. I had an Yngwie Strat at one point, but I sold that. But I love the Telecaster as far as like its versatility. Like that's very good because I do jazz and rock stuff. So that's something that I can definitely bust out for both of them. And for whatever reason, this works well for jazz too, jazz and rock, which definitely surprised me and threw me off guard. But I've always loved the SGs. I've never been too crazy about the Les Pauls. They're just a little too heavy for me. I just find them a little bit uncomfortable to play. And I just prefer the sound of the SG more. But yeah. If you guys have any song requests, shoot them out. It doesn't have to be jazz. It could be anything. It could be rock. I'm a huge rock guy too. You've seen all the random videos I do. I'm all over the place. So anything you want to request, I am all ears. Yeah, honestly, for your first electric guitar, I think that would be great. I mean, it all depends on what your price range is, because if you're looking to get a Gibson, they're definitely a little pricey. You can get an Epiphone, which is also a good substitute if you're looking for something a little bit more cost effective. But I think a SG is a great guitar. I mean, the thing with buying fancy guitars and stuff like that, it just, I mean, if you're going to be serious about it and stuff like that, then why not? You know what I mean? Because it's a lot of times people are hesitant to buy nice guitars because they're worried about whether or not they're going to get good use out of it, and if it's going to be a good investment, something they're going to play and stuff like that. But if you know yourself and you know that you're going to be serious and you're going to play it, you know, why not? So I would definitely say go for it if that's what you feel like you should do. I think that's a great first guitar. Child, cool. Yeah, let's do that. Why not? I don't know if you mean. I could do Voodoo Child. I don't know. I don't know if you mean Voodoo Child. I don't know that one, but let me get the volume. Yeah, if my dad's watching this right now, he'll be happy that you requested that. So. Just want to make sure it's not. There's no clipping in the mic. else we got? FCP remix, yeah. I don't know beyond that. I know the main riff. That I haven't heard that song since I was in high school. Good call on that one. Yeah, I do sing the Lick of the Week intro. Yeah, that was I decided I needed a little intro to that video because I just felt awkward just talking at the beginning of every one. So I figured that would just be a quick way to bring it in. So I just came up with some chords. I forget exactly. Something like some chords like that, and then I just sung each note individually. Something like that. How is the volume for you guys? Is there any clipping at all? I didn't have any issues with it last time. I want to make sure it's still okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, good night. Have a good night. Are you guys getting any clipping at any point, or are the volume levels okay? Yeah, I needed something. I needed a little something to bring that intro in. So volume is good? Cool. Yeah, I was actually gonna change. I was gonna start like alternating the last chord, so instead of maybe do something like something like that, but I just didn't have enough time to. I wanted to because if people started to get to know the little jingle, I wanted to once in a while kind of just throw them off, change the last chord, but I didn't get around to it. Little clipping when I went to the distortion for Voodoo Child. What are my thoughts on Jonathan Kreisberg? I think he's incredible. I definitely think if you're looking for a guitar player that has a lot of really cool, I don't want to say worked out, but it sounds like he's got a lot of cool worked out patterns under his fingers that he can just bust out at any given time. And I think if you're looking for a guitarist like that, where you want to get a lot of really cool stuff from and just steal a lot of really cool licks, I think he's one of the best guys for stuff like that. And I love his playing. My favorite recording is him doing the live recording of Autumn in New York. I think his solo on that is so beautiful. I love his tone. I think he's got a great sound. I think he's really good at playing over odd meters too. He's got a very good sense of kind of playing very freely and rhythmically over odd meters, which is definitely challenging for a lot of people. And I really like his songwriting too. I think South of Everywhere is like a really unique sound. I think he's definitely got a lot of really cool stuff to contribute to like the modern jazz sound. So yeah, I think he's great. What about you? What are your thoughts on him? You a fan? That one, I have a video that's coming out in probably a couple of weeks. It's 10 cool patterns in the augmented scale, and one of them is Jonathan Kreisler. Did that one. I learned that whole solo at one point, the Autumn in New York. There's a lot of great stuff. He does a cool de-altered. Something like that. I used to be obsessed with that video. I always can really transcribe the first chord of his solos because he goes crazy after that. Yeah, he's got a lot of crazy stuff. Great alternate picking too. You haven't heard him? Yeah, he's like a more modern guy. He's been around for a little while. I would recommend this. I'll write down the name of the album. It's the South of Everywhere, right? Not the South of Nowhere. And also look up him doing this song live. It's so beautiful. I love the intro. I used to know those chords. I used to know what were those chords? I used to know those intro chords. Wave Upon Wave. I haven't heard that. I haven't checked out a lot of his albums. I've checked out the South of Everywhere, and then there was I think there was like an Ari Honegg album that he was on that I really liked. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I need to check out more of him myself. Yeah. If you have any requests too, shoot them out. I'm always looking for new stuff to listen to. What have you guys been listening to lately? Alan, I never heard of him. Any good albums you would recommend? He did a reharm of Stella on the Wave Upon Wave. Oh, really? Yeah, I've heard the Stella. He does Stella, and I believe in 7 on South of Everywhere. Tricky. That's a really good exercise too. If you get to a point where you know a standard really well, then see if you can do it in some odd meters, and then that's like a good way of taking something that you're really comfortable with and then just figuring out a way to just make it more complicated. Me and my friends used to do that. We would like take some standards and we would try to play them in like 5 or do it in 7. 5 and 7 obviously seem to be the most common ones, like something like 9, I would probably have to work a lot harder at. It seems like at a certain point you can kind of get a little more comfortable feeling things in 7 just from listening to so much stuff in 7. Oh yeah, Lewis Cole is incredible. That Time album is so good. Um, oh yeah, that's a great. Yeah, you can. So what he's talking about is like, let's say we're playing over E minor 7 flat 5. Yeah, yeah. And just to answer that, again, Lewis Cole is incredible. That song every time. That's like one of the most beautiful songs. I love that chord. That chord progression is just perfect. Every single chord is. Oh my god, I love that. But so like he's saying, if you a flat 5 major 7 over a minor 7 flat 5 chord, a lot of numbers going on there. But so if you're playing E minor 7 flat 5, the flatted fifth of that is B flat, right? So you could play a B flat major 7. Or even more, if you want to get even closer to the sound of the chord, you do B flat major 7 sharp 11 instead of. Right, so like over that, let me just get a little vamp. So. I'll do it with the regular 5. I'll do just B flat major 7, so you can hear the difference. Hear that note is a little dissonant, but right, the flat 5 is great because it's your E note, so it's just the root of the flat minor 7 flat 5 chord. So you could think B flat Lydian over your E minor 7 flat 5. That's a really good trick. I always try to come up with different ways to think. Anytime there's a chord that I have a hard time thinking over, I see if I can translate it to something that I know how to solo over. So like that right there, like I'm much more comfortable soloing over B flat major 7 than I am over E minor 7 flat 5, you know? Because as guitar players, we're going to encounter songs where it's just like a vamp of one chord. You know, we've all played over like a major 7 vamp or a minor 7 vamp. I mean, how often do you play over a song where it's... You know, I can't say that I've encountered that yet, but I'm sure some people have tried it. But it's very rare that there's a song where the tonal center is centered around the Locrian, you know, minor 7 flat 5 chord. So finding ways to translate it to other stuff is great, because then you can literally just take the stuff that you already know and just move it to whatever note it has to happen on, right? That Pat Martino is all about that. He transfers the majority of the stuff that he plays over to Dorian, which is a really cool sound. And that's a great way to get so much mileage out of everything that you already know, you know. And also, it's great for voicings too, because all of your B flat major 7 sharp 11 voicings work over E minor 7 flat 5. So that's a good key. I'll do the open E. Right, that's the first chord of Stella. Right, if you just look at the notes, it's straight up B flat major 7 sharp 11. So that whole time I was thinking B flat major 7, and I had a whole different way of thinking of the voicings. That's a great question. Do I like the natural 9 or the flat 9 more over half diminished? I definitely like the natural 9, and the reason why that is well, first off, the reason why I think the natural 9 tends to sound better than the flat 9 is because the flat 9 is a half step above a chord tone, right? The root is a chord tone, right? So the half step has that kind of weird pull where it wants to go down. So if I'm playing this, right? It kind of has like wants to go down. down here, once I go down, it sounds kind of resolved. But if I go up, and I'll do, watch, I'm going to do all the same stuff I was doing, but I'll do the 9 instead. As opposed to... So I would prefer that, and what I do to incorporate that is, like I was just saying, translate it to something that you're comfortable playing over. So I'm comfortable playing over melodic, like minor major 7 chords. So G minor major 7, melodic minor. So you can think G melodic minor over your E minor 7 flat 5, and that works great. So let's say I have a melodic, like a G melodic minor line. I'll go. Oh shit! Wrong delay. Sorry. Okay, that's a G melodic minor line. Something I don't remember exactly what I played, but so watch. There you go. So just play your E minor 7 flat 5 and just like mess around with like a G minor major 7 arpeggio. Add the 9 if you want. So I really like the sound of that. I think it's really colorful when you add the natural 9, and I typically prefer that if I'm gonna and I would never put a flat 9 in a voicing. Like I would never do like a minor 7 flat 5 flat 9, right? But I could put the natural 9, and that has an interesting sound. When did I start playing guitar? I started when I was in 5th grade, so that would be 18 years now I've been playing. And like Jacob was saying before about that, like he thinks you can think B flat major 7 over E minor 7 flat 5. So if you wanted to add the natural 9, just think about, so the natural 9 against E is F sharp, right? So the note that you would have to change over your B flat, right, F sharp, so that makes it a sharp 5. So it's Lydian, the scale would be called Lydian augmented. So once you get into the melodic minor modes, you get a little bit more intricate scales that you might not have heard before, or some people have different names for them. So Lydian augmented, so it's just a Lydian mode, but it has a sharp 5. So B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B flat. Interval wise, it's 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, sharp 5, 6, 7, root. So again, you could think either G melodic minor, or you can think B flat Lydian augmented, whatever you're more comfortable with. Do I have any go-to chords for a vamp? That all depends. Give me a tonality. So like, are you talking like a minor vamp or like major or dominant? Just give me a tonality. I'll give you, I'll show you whatever I do. So for Lydian, so let's do the key of G. Yeah, let's do G, I guess. Let's do A, so I can have the open string ring out, so I don't have to keep using the pedal. So if I was gonna get a lot of different Lydian voicings going, I would literally just start out with all the regular major 7 voicings that I know, and I would just take the 5s and lower them. So this would turn into this, right? This would turn into this. This would turn into this. That's a cool, and that's a little bit unusual. A lot of people don't use that one. So that'd be, so if we're in A Lydian, that's C sharp, G sharp, A, D sharp. So right there, that's an easy way to take chords that you already know and get more unique sounds out of them just by adjusting one note. Then the last one right up here, 5-0. So I can start with like 4 of those. Then beyond that, there's a lot of different things I'll do, so it's kind of a broad answer, but like, so for example, I could take this one chord, and then once I have this voicing, I can just take all the notes and move them up to the next note in the scale. So for example, like if I know my Lydian scale, starting here, the next note on this string would be this. Okay, so that note's gonna go up to there. The next string, this string would be up here, and then these two would go up here. So now I have, okay, and then if I keep going, does that make sense what I just said? I know that's a little confusing. Did you understand what I just did there? I like that one. And then from there are like every chord has triad pairs that go with them. So for the case of Lydian, you can play an A major and a B major triad because those line up in the scale. So you could take those and just move those in the inversions. And having those, being able to weave in and out of those. And then I'll do like, a lot of it comes down to just taking a lot of different intervals and working them through every chord quality. So you have your fourths, right? I'll do 3 groups of 4s. So my whole thing with voicings has always been to just know the scale inside and out on every string. And then be able to work out voicings going up and down the scale. And then once I get all of those worked out, I'll kind of go through and I'll pick and choose which ones I like and which ones I don't like. So for an example, like the ones that I did where I went like this, I would say my least favorite one out of all those is this. Like, I mean, that sounds interesting. But I probably, I would like if I listen to that first one in comparison to that second one, to my ears, that first one is much more colorful and just kind of has the characteristics of that sound more, that chord. I like the third one. That's fine. That one, I like that one a lot. So then I'll kind of just go through and I'll make a note of the ones that I don't like, and then just playing over like one chord vamps, getting comfortable moving. This is a cool shape to move around the scale too. A, B, F sharp. So it's like a major second and then a fifth, so it gives you kind of an open sound. Anytime you're dealing with fifths and seconds and fourths and anything that doesn't really have any thirds or sixths in them, you're going to get much more of an open sound. That's great. I like that a lot. See, like that one, I don't like that one. So I'll leave that one out. And I know why I don't like the sound of that one, because it has a tritone in it. So a lot of times that tritone could create kind of a dissonant harmony. See? Same thing with this chord, right ahead. So then I'll take note of that. Like if I know I don't really like the sound of something, I'll break it down. I'll say, okay, why don't I like that? What is it about that sound? And I'll figure out the notes that are creating a conflict to my ears. And this is all very subjective stuff. You know, I mean, you might like the sound of that. Some people will. So I'm not saying it's the same for everybody, but for me, that's how it is. Also this one, just do the same, move the F sharp down to E, so then you have A, B, E. All three of those are great. What was that? What song did I just quote there? A little trivia for you guys. I did that on accident at first, but then you guys notice what song that is? Norwegian Wood. I did it with the harmonized chord. I like stuff like that. I like just taking, figuring out how to take like a cool melody that you like the sound of and seeing how you can translate it to different chords. You know, I do that a lot. Like a lot of times when I'm soloing, I'll quote like a melody from a different jazz standard, but I'll do it in a different spot. Like, so like for example, let's say like the first chord of Stella by Starlight. Right, that's Round About Midnight. Right. Taking all these different ideas, seeing how you can translate them if you like the sound of them. Could I play any cool Frank Zappa riffs? Let's see if I... Do you have a specific song you'd like to hear? I could do, let me see if I remember this. I'm going to butcher this. This is the one thing I hate about the live stream is you're going to hear me mess up here, so... so hard. That part is killer. That's one. Do I have any others? A lot of these I learn them to do the videos and then I forget them if I don't play them for a while. Like there's no way I would be able to get through St. Alphonse alone. So yeah, it's been too long. I'll practice those like forever to get them for the videos, and then if I don't play them for a while, I get rusty. I don't remember them. I don't know Bamboozled by Love. What album is that off of? There's so many Frank Zappa albums. It's kind of overwhelming. if you're somebody who's never really checked out Frank Zappa and you're looking where to start, it can definitely be overwhelming. But I definitely have some specific, I definitely have like some specific albums I would recommend people. I would definitely say Apostrophe, Overnight Sensation, Roxy and Elsewhere. What's it? One Size Fits All. I love Live at the Fillmore. That one's and you can hear a lot of the crowd interaction stuff when they're playing in a live setting, which is that in itself is just incredible. I mean, the way that they're able to work in a lot of those kind of skits but it seems so perfectly worked out, and it just fits perfectly in with the sections that they're doing. And Frank Zappa was just on a completely different level. I mean, that guy, was just a machine, and the amount of music he wrote. And I remember watching an interview of him like shortly before he died when he was really sick. And he was saying, he's like, that being sick has really slowed me down a lot. I only write about 8 hours a day now. So I don't even know what he was doing before that. But I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at how much stuff he's written and how many albums he has. I mean, he's one of the most prolific. I think he might be one of the most recorded artists of all time. Yeah. There's I don't think there'll ever be another Frank Zappa. I don't know who you can even compare to Frank Zappa for nowadays, and I don't even necessarily know if Frank Zappa would be as recognized nowadays. I think he's one of those people where he was perfect for the time he came out. You know what I mean? He was so different and so innovative, and there was nobody like him. And there's still nobody like him, but I think now music is so oversaturated. There's so many people. It's so hard to get recognition now, and I think somebody like Frank Zappa could definitely get lost in the in the shuffle nowadays. So I think the time he came out was definitely perfect, and I think he definitely completely made his impact on music. So. And I saw Dweezil Zappa like a year ago. They did it's one of those Zappa Play Zappa shows, and it was great. They did a lot. The thing that's funny whenever I see any sort of Frank Zappa shows is there's always like a handful of songs I've never heard before. And he's like one of those artists. It's like I'm a huge Beach Boys fan, and when I go to see Brian Wilson, I know every single song because I know all their albums and stuff like that. But Frank Zappa, there's always going to be songs that you hear that you've never heard, and always things that are just going to catch you off guard, which is cool. It just shows you how deep you can really go with his music. And I'd be very impressed. I'm sure there's some Frank Zappa freaks out there who have listened to everything he's done, but I can't even imagine how long that must have taken. All right, what do you guys got for me? Anything? Any requests? Any songs? Any questions? Even just questions about doesn't even have to be guitar related. Just anything, favorite albums or any favorite albums by any certain artist. You ask me anything, whatever you want. I've never heard of Alligator Blood. Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. So I don't remember the whole thing. Cabin Essence. I wish I want to do a video of that one. That's definitely on my list of videos too. I got to figure that one out. Any standard, always interesting. Thank you. Any standards you guys want to hear? I really wish I could have done Cabin Essence. That's an amazing request. I'm a Brian Wilson freak, so anything Brian Wilson, especially that period, the whole Smile period was, I think, Brian at his peak. It's really such a shame what happened to him when he was writing the Smile album. I think if he hadn't had his nervous breakdown and hadn't, stopped doing that album, I think we would have seen some truly like revolutionary music. I think Pet Sounds was just the tip of the iceberg, and it's just such a shame what Brian has gone through. Brian Wilson is one of my heroes. I think he's one of the most underrated musicians of all time. And yeah, I'll see if I can figure it out for next week. But, I think, like, if he hadn't had that breakdown, I can't even imagine some of the stuff he would have been written. Because, after Pet Sounds went out and then he started doing Smile, you can just hear how experimental he was getting and how much crazy stuff he was getting going. And those songs are just on a whole other level. To think that was written in 1967 is almost beyond comprehension. He was so ahead of his time. So he wants me to play a standard. You guys have any standard requests? You have 10 seconds, otherwise I'll pick one. 10 seconds for a standard request. I'll do one. I like, this is a nice one called My Ideal. Midnight, sure. Sorry if anybody was listening to that one. Hopefully that wasn't a buzzkill. We'll do Around Midnight. Always like taking requests. I think I haven't played that in a while. I think I screwed up the bridge. It's B flat minor. My bad. Hopefully my jazz friends don't see this video and see that I screwed up the bridge to Around Midnight. Yeah, it's an incredible melody. I love that song. Yeah, that's one of those songs too. When you play it with people, a lot of people play the changes differently. So I don't know if what I'm playing is exactly correct. I guess the way what you would base it off of the Thelonious Monk version, obviously, to see what's correct. But like Wes Montgomery plays it much differently than Miles Davis. There's all these different versions that people base the changes off of. Like that part where it goes. Some people go to E flat minor there. Other people go to G flat. I usually go to G flat major, do the 2-5-1. A cool chord for the second chord. So this is a chord I got from Joe DiOrio, who I studied with a while ago, an incredible jazz guy. If you guys don't know him, from Waterbury, Connecticut. It's a minor 7 flat 5, but you have the 11 right under the flat 5. So it's C, B flat, F, G flat. And that's cool too. For the F minor 7 flat 5, you have F, B flat, B, E flat. So I like the request tonight. A lot of variety. So yeah, you guys got anything else you want to hear, or any questions, or anything you want to just discuss? Any artists or anything? Any pressing issues? Keith Jarrett. That's a great question. I've always loved Keith Jarrett. I've always been a huge fan of his, and I think as a trio, him with Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette, I think their ability to play around the time is just incredible because a lot, usually I have a pretty good ear for where the time is and where the form is in songs and stuff like that when I'm listening. But, even still to this day, I'll be listening to a lot of those Keith Jarrett trio albums. And it's very hard for me to completely get a grasp on like where the beat is and where the form is and stuff like that. And sometimes I actually wonder if they're actually just deliberately playing around it and not even necessarily playing completely in time. Like if you listen to their version of Stella by Starlight off of the I think it's Standards in Norway, or one of Standards Volume 1, one of those. I have a very hard time just like kind of hearing the changes evenly like within the 4 time frame over that. So I think as far as that goes, I mean he's incredible, um, and I love his improvising. I love his lines. I love his rhythmic playing. Like he's a very rhythmic player, and he leaves a lot of space. Like he's one of those guys who can play like really technically proficient, really choppy kind of stuff. Not choppy in a sense like it's like sloppy, like chops. Like he's got really good chops on the piano. He can play a lot of that very technical stuff, but then he also like simultaneously leaves a lot of space. And I love his harmony. And he's also one of those jazz guys who explores a lot of classical music, which I really like. Like he has a ton of albums where he's just covering a lot of classical piano stuff and just cool like classical arrangements. So I appreciate the fact that he's very versatile as far as that goes. From what I've heard, he's not the nicest guy, so that's unfortunate to hear. But I don't want to speak for him because I've never met him and I don't know. But I've heard stories that he's not the nicest guy to be around. And, it's unfortunate because we do hear that about a lot of people from time to time. And when you have somebody who's considered a hero of yours, it's definitely disheartening to hear stuff like that. But regardless of how he is as a person, it doesn't change the way he plays, obviously. So I'm a huge fan of his. Um, um, no, I have not. I'll write that one down. Jasmine. Keith Jarrett. Keith, yeah, here we go with Charlie Hayden. Cool, I will download that from 2010. Nice. For All We Know, nice. Body and Soul, nice. Yeah, Charlie Hayden is great too. I love those ECM guys. All those guys that play in the ECM are great. There was this really cool album. I don't know if it was Charlie Hayden or Mark Johnson, but it was a Paul Motion album called I Have the Floor. Let me see. I Have the Floor Above Her or something like that. I don't remember. Paul Motion. Let me see. I'm just going through Spotify right now. I Have the Floor Above Her with Bill Frisell. Yeah, is it this? I Have the Room Above Her with Paul Motion, Bill Frisell, Joe Levant. Oh, there's no bass. I don't know why I thought Charlie Hayden was on that. But that's a really cool album for that ECM kind of more atmospheric, ambient kind of stuff. I used to listen to that album a lot in college. I love Bill Frisell for stuff like that. And Bill Frisell is honestly a guy I haven't checked enough of. I haven't checked out enough of. I should check out more of him, especially for as far as effects and stuff like that. I've never been a huge effects guy. Not that I don't like it or I don't think I don't believe in it. I remember back when I was in college, I would try to mess around with effects from time to time, and I would always kind of just feel guilty for whatever reason. I always felt like it was time that could have been spent practicing. I was always be like, why am I messing around with these pedals and stuff like that when I can be playing and working on stuff? But, I have some friends that are incredible. Like I have a friend who worked for Analog Man, he's a guy in Danbury, Connecticut, and you might have heard of him, but he's known, his famous thing is he does like a famous Ibanez Tube Screamer modification, and that's like what he's known for. And my friend worked for him, and my friend Ted, he's incredible with pedals and stuff like that, and he's always exploring, and he's got all kinds of weird old gear and like weird just like a synth guitar, like all these crazy things that you don't see very often, and he's great with all of them. And I've never really been that experienced with stuff like that. Like if you look at, you can't see my pedal board here, but what I have is my general setup is I have 4 pedals. I have a Boss Giga Delay, the TC Electronic Hall of Fame reverb, and then a full tone GT 500 distortion pedal, and then I just have a Boss EQ just to boost some of the signals if I want. If I want a little bit more headroom, if I want some more highs or some more lows, I can mess around with that. And that gives me a little bit more versatility as far as like, so right now, like, let me turn it up a bit. So this is just regular. Get a little bit more low end with that, a little boosted, a little, almost like a compressor. Yeah, Joe DiOrio. I studied with Joe DiOrio for a long time, and I learned a ton from him. I mean, I owe him a lot for a lot of my knowledge on unique voice, like that voicing right there. And I got that from him. Like he showed me so many cool, all these really intervallic, like for minor 7 voicing. Right, this is a really cool Joe DiOrio. Pain in the ass. A flat, G flat, B flat, and then B. You can feel that in your hand. It's ridiculous. Or major 9. I'm sorry, minor major 9. But the way I found out about Joe DiOrio was I went to this guitar camp in New Milford, Connecticut, that was around for a while, called National Guitar Workshop, and it went out of business, sadly, or whatever you call a place like that going under. But when I was there, I took a jazz class, and a guy mentioned to me, said there's this amazing jazz guitarist, Joe DiOrio, who lives in Waterbury, Connecticut, and I knew who Joe DiOrio was from like YouTube videos and stuff like that. I knew he was a badass. So this was back in the days, like when people still had phone books and stuff like that. So I looked up his name in the phone book, and I actually found his number was actually in the phone book. So I just called him. I was like super nervous. I just called him up. I was like, "Hi, I'm a guitar player from Connecticut. I heard that you live in Waterbury." I was like, "Do you give lessons or anything?" And he said, "Yeah." So I went to his house. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I went there, and then I had found out that he had a stroke, like recently. So he wasn't really able to play much, unfortunately. Like he was able to play a little bit, but like he would have to stop and he would get a little bit tired and stuff like that. But as far as knowledge wise, mentally he was still completely with it, and he he just showed he's one of these guys where throughout his life he would just write out paper. He would have papers after papers after papers of just stuff that he would write out and document and keep it all together. So he still had all of that, and he would just take stuff out, just show me sheets of like chord voicings and patterns and stuff like that. Such a wealth of knowledge, and such a guy with such a thirst for knowledge, just constantly trying to expand and trying to learn new things and trying to push the envelope. And that's pretty apparent when you hear him play. I mean, he plays so much ridiculous stuff and really pushed the boundaries as far as stuff that jazz guitar players do and stuff like that. So he gave me a lot of that, and I owe so much to him. And I can't say enough good things about Joe DiOrio, and I haven't seen him in years, and I really I do miss him, and I feel bad. I really should call him and see how he's doing. It has been a long time, but I studied with him for a few years. At his house, and also at like a little private guitar class that he put on, that he did for a while. Um, yeah, he's still alive. He's still alive. He's probably in his early 80s now, I would guess. And I met him when I was a senior in high school, so that was 2009. Um, and at that time, he was like in his mid 70s. He's really funny too. He's like a very like badass, old school like Italian type guy, like just like a no bullshit kind of guy. He'll definitely tell it like it is, but a very sweet guy. He has a really good heart, but very funny. Great sense of humor. And I remember like we went out to lunch for his 75th birthday, and we were just like, all right, any words of wisdom after 75 years on this planet? And he was just like, he said something along the lines of, he was like, yeah, I got some words of wisdom for you guys. Fuck everything, do whatever you want, stop worrying about stuff, stop worrying about getting weird diseases, because while you're worrying about those, you're getting other diseases that you never even heard of. And it just like all this stuff, just like pretty much the whole gist of it was just, life's too short, do whatever you want, stop, worrying so much about tomorrow. And yeah, he's just an amazing guy. I can't say enough good things about him. And I would highly, it's kind of hard to find, but he did an, I'm going to write it down. Joe DiOrio, Mick Goodrick. Did this amazing duo guitar album with Mick Goodrick. Very hard to find. It's like out of print. But it's one of my favorite duo guitar albums ever. And he plays some incredible stuff. He does this on Green Dolphin Street in the key of C. And he does this really cool intro. He goes... And then he goes into his fifth stuff. All about that kind of stuff. But I mean, he's another guy too. Like, if you're looking just for some lines and some vocab over standards and stuff like that, he's got so many books that he's written over the years. He's got a book called Fusion Guitar, which is all just line studies over standards. He's got a book called Giant Steps, which is literally just solos over giant steps. And he had this crazy reharm he did for giant steps, a chromatic reharm where he goes... done in so long. I don't remember it, but that I love that beginning. So basically what he did, he just took the Giant Steps melody. I'm sorry. And he starts on A flat on the bottom note, so you get... And he literally just goes down chromatically, so then it becomes... And that's like a perfect example of just taking something and just completely turning it into his own thing, coming up with a really unique way of approaching something. So he's got that. He's got another book called 21st Century Intervallic Designs or something like that. And his chord melody stuff was incredible too. I feel like as far as him, that was probably the area I might have learned the most in was chord melodies and how to just basically. I think his whole philosophy was to never play any cliche voicings. Like he's not a guy you would ever see play like this chord. You know what I mean? He would do something like he'd find some sort of unique voicing to substitute it for, or you know. Yeah, he's incredible. Love Joe DiOrio. Yeah, it's insane. He wrote an entire book, and I learned almost every solo in the book, and I still feel like I'm just getting started on Giant Steps. That's a crazy song. It's so funny. You could practice it forever, and you think you know it, and then all of a sudden someone calls it on a gig, and that's when you truly, it's truly put to the test. I feel the same way about rhythm changes when people are going like. People call like rhythm changes like super fast. I feel like I could barely get by on something like that. I mean, when I get to the bridge, I feel like I can relax because it's one chord, 2 bars each. You know what I mean? But that A section, so many fast moving chords, and I mean, if you want, you can just think. Just kind of think like your B flat 7 or B flat major type stuff, but to really articulate the sound of those changes, I could do it at a certain once it gets past a certain tempo. That's when I start to basically. I feel like I'm just trying to survive the whole time. There's a funny phrase. I actually played Giant Steps one time with John Patitucci. He came to back when I was in college. He came to my college and he was like a guest artist, and he played with like the combo, like the upper combos at the college, and we got to play with him at the concert. And the song we chose was Giant Steps. And I remember we got out there on the to play, and he says to us, he was like, "Let's call it like a little bit under, so we can create rather than survive." And I thought that was a great way to put it, because a lot of times you call these songs and you're like one, two, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going so fast, and then when you're playing, it just feels like you're trying to just survive the whole thing, But sometimes if you do it a little bit under, it kind of frees up your mind a little bit, where you can actually worry more about creating something. And that's not to discount playing up tempos. Obviously, it probably sounds like I'm just making excuses for myself. Like we should always be able to play up tempos and be able to play whatever speed you need to. And one thing that I've been trying to work on for getting better at playing up tempos is apparently Wes Montgomery did this a lot. But like if you're playing something really fast, instead of just feeling it like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, like feeling it like really up. Feeling it in halftime. So instead of feeling the upbeats 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you feel like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So feel it on beats 1 and 3 instead, and then you're feeling it in halftime. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So instead of like, I'm sorry. Instead of just like playing all your eighth note lines and trying to survive, you can think of it like 2, 1, 2, 3, sometimes I was falling back into my lines and stuff like that, but to kind of break it up a little bit and maybe give you a different way of feeling it, try to feel beats 1 and 3. Because whenever we're playing over jazz, right, we're always told to feel beats 2 and 4. And the 2 and 4, when you're playing it like in really up tempo, that can kind of give you that anxious kind of feeling where it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. If you're feeling it like that constantly when you're playing really fast, it's always going to be kind of like that anxious, like, oh my god, like I got to keep up with the tempo and stuff like that. But if you break it down to 1 and 3, then it's kind of more like a straight, almost like a rock, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then it could free you up a little bit. And that's something that I'm still working on to this day. I mean, it's always, everything's always a work in process. It never gets to a point where you're just completely, free and comfortable with everything. And I think some people have that idea in their head that there are some people that just stop working and they just get to this point where they're just completely comfortable with everything. And I even think that too. I'll hear some people and I'll be like, oh my God, this guy's incredible. He probably like never has to work on anything. But I think that's just like a human thing. I think when we're viewing things outside of our own lens, we have this idea that everyone else like has everything figured out completely and everything's great for them. But I think everybody's very critical with themselves and everyone's trying to push themselves to constantly learn and better themselves. So, it's always a work in progress. This is great. I mean, yeah, you guys are asking great questions. Thanks for hanging on into this live chat for so long. I appreciate it. Any more questions? Any requests? Yeah, I do. A lot of the stuff I write is for two guitars. Like I have some stuff that I'm recording. I've have like 10 songs that I've been doing for a while that I eventually want to put onto a solo album. But I could play like one of the guitar parts. Like one of them goes. All right, one of them is. gist of it. That's oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds way different with the second guitar. It's more of a heavy song. Like it's like I have it on my computer. I'll play like a little snippet so you can hear it with the drums and stuff. That's probably the only one that I can somewhat demonstrate with a single guitar. Kind of has like almost like a Radiohead kind of vibe. This is what it sounds like with the tube. Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't have a right now. It's just called New Song. So that's just the name that the file that I called in Ableton. So I'm still figuring out names and stuff like that. But I have about, let me see how many songs I have. I have one, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 right now. So yeah, it's not really a jazzy album. It's more of a progressive, borderline metal album. Yeah, it's just something I'm going to do on my own. I have a lot of different songs that are in the works. I just kind of get myself together and finish them. But it's just me, and I'll do the guitar, bass, keyboard, and stuff like that. And I have Superior Drummer on Ableton, which is like a really good drum programming software. A lot of groups have used that. Like I don't know if they use this specific one, but I'm really into Animals as Leaders, and their entire first album was all drum programming, and it's amazing because you listen to it and you almost can't even tell. So if I could find a drummer that I can maybe pay to learn the songs and record them and stuff like that, maybe that'll be a better option, just so it has more of a live kind of realistic sound to it. But for now, I'm just going to program drums and see where it goes from there. But these are a lot of ideas I've had for a long time, but I just need to get around it. I've been so occupied with the YouTube channel as of late. So I mean, I think once I have like a decent following on the YouTube, that'll be a good outlet for once I release this album to show people and stuff like that. I'll have a good amount of subscribers that might, notice it or something like that if I do some posts or some videos about it and stuff like that. Yeah, and let's see. All right. Yeah, so I'm probably going to head out in like 5 minutes or so. You guys got any last questions or any last songs you want me to play? Oh, of course. Oh, I love that album. Is incredible. I love that album. Yeah. I have one song actually. I'll play. I have one song that I programmed on piano that kind of has a Tigran Hamasyan vibe. Or not this one. I'm sorry. Let me see. Tigran. I'll fast forward. This is just programmed piano. So that was something that I was going through like a pretty hardcore Tigran Hamasyan phase one time, and I I started programming some piano stuff that I wanted to sound like him. I wanted to see if I could write some stuff similar to him, so I was just programming some stuff, and I came up with that. I don't know if Nate Wood. I don't think Nate Wood plays drums on that album, but Nate Wood, the incredible guy who does like the multiple instruments at the same time, a drummer for oh thank you, drummer for why am I blanking on their name right now? How am I forgetting their name right now? I can't believe I'm forgetting. The progressive rock group that Nate Wood, like the jazz prog group that Nate Wood plays drums for. He actually he mastered my progressive rock group's album. If you guys want to check it out on Spotify or anything, I'll put the name of it in. It's like prog rock with like a horn section, like that kind of vibe. I cannot. Wait, I gotta figure this. This is gonna bother me now. How am I forgetting the name of this group? Kneebody. What am I talking about? Kneebody. Yeah. I can't believe I just forgot that. I'm sorry if anybody from in the very very slim chance that anybody from Kneebody ever sees one of these. I apologize. I love you guys. Um, but yeah, yeah. And you guys got any last questions or any last song requests before I head out? Classical, yeah. I don't know if to be honest, it's so funny. All the videos, the classical videos I do, they're all meant for two guitars. So I don't know if I have a lot of classical stuff worked out for one guitar. Let me think if there's anything I can at least half-ass or maybe get through. I want to. I would try Claire de Lune, but I don't. I know I don't know the second half well enough, and I don't want to embarrass myself. Um, So yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I'll have to see if I could work out a classical one for next time. But thank you for the request. Also, thank you for staying for this whole time. I really appreciate it. It's very cool of you. And hopefully, I'll be able to do this again next Friday or some other time during the week next time. But I'll always I think you probably saw it scheduled on my channel. Hopefully, so I'll always have them scheduled so you know when they're coming up. Once I figure out what time I'm able to do it. But yeah, I'm gonna sign off for now. But thanks a lot for watching, guys, and for all you guys that have been here the whole time. Thanks, that's really cool of you. So I thank you very much. I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, always come back with whatever questions you want, any requests, and I'm happy to try to accommodate everybody. So thanks again, and I will see you guys soon. Enjoy your weekend. All right, take care, guys.